One warm May afternoon, I was over at Boulaire. Ursula and I had gone for a swim. Max said she didn't feel up to it, and I thought Ursula's glance was anxious, but the two of us had a fine swim. We knew the tides and undertows, and so were able to go out beyond the breakers. When we got back to the house, Max was on the veranda, curled up in a wicker swing, a pile of her old sketchbooks beside her, one open in her lap. Ursula picked up a sketchbook Max had filled when they were on safari, shooting with cameras, not guns. Ursula had the camera, Max the sketchbook, and had filled it with pictures of wildebeests, honey badgers, lions, elephants, giraffes. "Get dressed," Max said sharply. "I don't want sand and salt water all over my sketchbooks." Then she smiled at us, her special, slow smile, which made me feel, not just like Max was fond of me, but that being Polyhymnia O'Keeffe, just as I was, with red hair and legs that were too long for me, was an all right thing to be. I changed in the green guest room, which was beginning to be Polly's room, and went back to the veranda. Urs was in the kitchen, doing something elegant with chicken and fresh dill, Max told me. I picked up another African sketchbook, this one filled with people rather than animals, pencil drawings of Africans doing tribal dances, pygmies, bushmen, matabels. Another sketchbook from Asia, more odd dances, people wearing masks, leaping about fires. "What's it about?" I asked. "Aggression," Max said, "getting rid of it, legitimately. We don't, nowadays, we sophisticated peoples. As society evolved, we began to repress the destructive, aggressive instincts we needed to acquire back when we were living in caves and trees and had to protect ourselves from wild animals or wild people. What do you do about your own anger?" "I chop wood," I said. "That's the good old-fashioned way of getting it out of your system, but it works." Max pointed to a pen and ink sketch of naked people dancing. They had long legs and long, slender necks, and Max had given them a wild rhythm. They're acting out their feral feelings in a way which doesn't endanger society. Kids in inner cities or even places like Cowpertown don't have any legitimate way of working out their aggression. Not too many of them, in the South at least, chop wood. "Beniseed gets mighty cold and we use a lot of wood. I can split a cord as well as Zan." Even the old scapegoat, Max rifled through the pages, was a useful device whereby people could dump their sins onto the animal and not be crushed under a burden of neurotic guilt. She put down the sketchbook, picked up a pad, and began sketching me. "If I had it to do again, I'd be an anthropologist. Who is it who said the proper study of mankind is man? I don't know the answer," and she went on. Or I didn't know the answer, and she went on. "We all have our own burdens of neurotic guilt. Sketching helps me get rid of mine." I reached for another sketchbook. It was filled with watercolor paintings of brilliant, jungly-looking birds, flashing color in deep green forests, and then more people wearing masks and dancing. To my surprise, Max grabbed the sketchbook. "I don't like those paintings." "Where were you when you did them?" I asked, not understanding why she was so vehement. "Ecuador." "Ecuador in South America. Were you in the jungle?" "For a while." She pulled out another sketchbook. "Now look at these sketches, Polly. It's from my last China trip." "When were you in Ecuador?" I persisted. "Last year. Look, here's the Great Wall of China. It's almost unbelievable, even when you're looking right at it." I looked, not at Max's drawings of the wall, but at Max herself. Her pallor, her thinness, and the pieces of the puzzle suddenly fitted together. This was why Max had come to Boulaire, why Ursula was on leave of absence from her hospital in New York. If I'd seen Urs alone, I'd have asked her if my guess was right, but there wasn't a moment. Once Urs called to us that dinner was ready, the three of us were together the whole time, and then they both waved me off when I left for home. I wished the Land Rover hadn't been available, so I could have asked Urs to drive me. As soon as I got back, I checked in and then went out to the lab and called from the phone there. Called the hospital in Cowpertown and left a message for Rennie to call me. I'd never done that before. I took the hose and sluiced down the cement floor of the lab, so I'd be there to grab the phone when it rang. I was cleaning up one of the tanks when he called. "What's up, Polly?" I perched on one of the high stools. The telephone was on the wall above a shelf full of beakers and jars, and a lot of lab paraphernalia. "Max was in Ecuador last year. Has she got one of your awful parasites?" A pause, then, "Thousands of Americans go to South America every year. Max was in the jungle, not on a cruise ship." Rennie was silent. "Listen, I know all about doctors' confidentiality, but you've talked to me a lot about your field, and unless you tell me I'm wrong, I'm going to assume that Max got infected while she was in South America, and this thing is going to kill her. Is it killing her? Rennie said, Polly, and then, look, I can't talk on the phone. Where are you? In the lab. There's no one around. Paul, I can't talk about it at all. You know that. Then it's true, okay? I know you're not, okay. I know I'm not next of kin. I have no legal right to ask, but Max is my friend. She matters to me. Rennie sounded very far away. If Mrs. Tomasi wanted you to know, she'd tell you. That's telling me. Thanks. What are you going to do with it? Nothing. You're right. If Max wanted me to know, she'd tell me herself. But I want to talk to you, please, not about Max. You've talked to me plenty about vectors and parasites circulating in the blood of the host in trypansomal form. You know too much about too many things, Rennie said. You don't have to talk to me about Max. Just talk to me about Netson and his research. I suppose I owe you that much. It's all my fault that you guessed. I'm not on call tomorrow evening. He'd borrowed a boat, so we went to Petros's as usual. Rennie had brought an article by his boss in the New England Journal of Medicine, and I skimmed it, then went back to read more slowly. Clinically, the patient experiences a recurrent fever. The trypansomal organisms go through some kind of change, but eventually they get back in the bloodstream and invade the heart. In the case of people like Max, though we never mentioned her name, who have no immunities whatsoever, severe heart disease develops. Even with people who have lived for generations in areas where the disease is endemic, about 10% of the population end up with congestive heart failure, and sudden cardiac arrest is common. How did Max find out she had Netsons? I handed him back the New England Journal. Rennie began leafing through it, not answering. I felt angry and frustrated, and at the same time, I respected his attitude. I spoke slowly, quietly. You don't have to tell me. I can figure it out. Max is no fool, and Ursula is a doctor, even if tropical medicine isn't her field. She must have heard of these diseases, and Max is an omnivorous reader. If she had a bite on the eyelid followed by conjunctivitis while she was in Ecuador, she'd have suspected. One of the foremost specialists in tropical disease is her cousin on the staff at M.A. Horn, which was started with her father's money. Ironic, isn't it? Rennie looked at me over the magazine but said nothing. I went on. So it would be a logical thing for her to come home to confirm a diagnosis she and Ursula already suspected, and to stay here because Dr. Netson's is in Cowpertown, and Bouillère is home, and Ursula is on leave of absence to be with Max until... My voice broke, and I looked at Rennie. He did not contradict me, so I knew I was right, if not specifically, at least generally. For a moment, a wave of nausea broke over me. I fought it back. Isn't there any treatment? Nothing satisfactory, Rennie spoke reluctantly. We're trying. Primeriquine in the dosage suitable for malaria, and there is a nitrofurazone derivative that shows promise. But if there's organ damage, it's irreversible, at least at present. What about a heart transplant, I suggested. They're chancy at best, and contradicted in Netson's. Polly, I've told you more than I should. You haven't said a word about Max. You've just talked to me about a disease in which you're particularly interested. If Max were involved, you could have said everything you've said to me, and it wouldn't have hurt. That's the difference. His voice was heavy. She's a special lady, a real lady, and there aren't many around nowadays. I truly admire her. I wish there was something I could do for her. You're lucky to have her for a friend. Yes, I know. We didn't finish our pizza. Petros came and asked us if anything was wrong with it, and we assured him it was fine, but he wanted to make us another on the house, and finally I convinced him I didn't feel well. Rennie asked him for the check. Polly, sweet, I'm sorry. I know. For all the breaks we've been getting in medicine. There's still a lot we can't do anything about. My voice was brittle. Nobody ever promised us life was going to be safe. Everybody dies sooner or later. Would you want not to? Rennie asked. To go on in a body growing older and older forever? Even if we could keep the body in reasonable shape, would you want to live forever? Yes, I said, and then no. Forever would be crippling. One would never have to do anything because one could always do it tomorrow. One could. I picked that up from Max, as so much else. But not extinction. I can't imagine Max being annihilated. Rennie didn't say anything, and I didn't want him to, because he's an intern, and I knew what he'd say. At least I'm older than Rennie in that way. He can take on faith that there are mitochondria and faranduli, and that there are quarks and quanta, even though they can't be seen. Well, so can I. My parents are scientists, after all. But I can also take on faith that Max is too alive to be extinguished by anything as banal as death. Rennie paid for the pizza. Polly, I looked at him. Can you keep what you've guessed to yourself? I'll try. If I don't see Max for a couple of days, maybe. I'll get it all into some kind of perspective. I'm not very good about hiding things from people I care about. Max had guessed immediately that I'd heard gossip about her and hers. But this was different. I'd have to keep her from knowing that I knew. We drove to the dock and jumped into the small motorboat. Halfway to Beneseed, Rennie cut the motor as usual, but instead of kissing, we looked up at the stars. In the lifespan of a star, I said, our lives are less than a flicker. Whether we live for 10 years or 100, in the lifespan of the universe, Rennie said, that life of a star is less than a flicker. And then he kissed me, and I wanted him to. Just as I was beginning to build, he broke off. Time to take you home, and we'll pause there.